Dr. Rankin is here also with Midwest Equity Assistance Center.
Different, meaning we have students that are being raised by grandmas. We even have some students being raised by great-grandmas. We have students who, for whatever reason, maybe were struggling at their previous school, so mom and dad shipped them to brother who's in the military. So sometimes you have 21-year-old brothers raising 7th and 8th graders, so there's not a lot of difference there in age, and so their parenting skills aren't always the best, but they're trying to do what's best for the child. You also have parents that they may have 2 moms or 2 dads. You have the mixed race family. You may have an African American and a white. The diversity in the homes is ever changing. There is no traditional 2-parent home, at least not in Junction City Middle School. There's not many of those. There's a lot of single parents, there's a lot of grandparents raising, there's a lot of brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles. We have foster kids, we have gay and lesbian parents raising kids, and those bring a whole host of issues to the classroom because, like Vicki said early on, you have your own biases, and you have to be able to put your biases aside to be able to work with all of this diversity in different homes. And so it's not uncommon for parents' homes to look different. One of the other things that you also have to deal with is parents don't have the same skill set that maybe they used to. Meaning more parents say, I can't do the math the way you guys are teaching it. I don't understand what my kids are doing. Please don't send any homework home, because we fight for an hour to 2 hours because we can't do it. So you have that also as an issue. So it really becomes something you have to take into account. We have some teachers this year experiencing what they call the flipped classroom, where they videotaped lessons, because most kids, for the most part, have iPads, they have laptops, they have iPhones, they have technology at home. So teachers are doing the flipped classroom where they've taped the lesson so the kid can watch it numerous times at home. Then when they come to school, then the teachers do the working through the problems and making sure kids understand how to do it. They do the activities. So you really got to think about what's at home for a support system when you're working with your kids.
We're just going to kind of go down the row. Mr. Martinez, have you ever had a student who, or a parent who was of a different diversity and was diverse from the teacher, and a teacher may have inadvertently offended that parent or grandparent, and it was a misunderstanding because of that?
Yeah, in fact, I can think of one particular incident that happened last year that we had an African-American family. This was on the 8th grade. We're 6th through 8th building, and this was at the 8th grade level. Team 10 was the team. I am the 6th grade administrator, but I've had the particular student when he was in 6th grade, and then he became an athlete when he was in 7th grade, and so I still dealt, as an athletic director, I dealt with this young man. Very challenging young man at times, but as long as he was engaged in something, he was going to be fine. And for this young man, athletics was his ticket to do well in the classroom and so forth. Back to that question, with a little background about that, was I was asked to sit in on a parent meeting, a team meeting. The team was going to meet with the parent and this student. I volunteered to sit in because our 8th grade administrator wasn't available. So I sat in because I currently had a relationship with the parent and this child, which I felt was in a positive way. So knowing, and Vicki and Mary have both hit on these things about knowing your parents, knowing where they come from and those kinds of things. And with me having that background knowledge of knowing how this parent is going to react in this meeting, this team of teachers didn't have that background knowledge. And so going into that meeting, what happened was, as this parent, well, it actually wasn't the parent. The parent was supposed to show up, but the grandparent was the one that showed up. And I've dealt with the grandparent as well. And this grandparent's very vocal. And I would just say it like this. in my upbringing, I wouldn't have done things the way that he treats his grandchildren. But that's my bias, that's my opinion, and I keep that to myself. Well, with these teachers in this meeting, what happened was it kind of got a little heated, but it only got heated in the sense that the teachers were just listening to him. I'll use the word vomit out all of his frustrations, what he was frustrated about, what the meeting was called for. And one of the particular team members got up out of frustration. While she's sitting there, she's like, you could just, her body language and everything just wasn't very positive. And he was feeding on that. And he began to get a little more riled up to where eventually he got under her skin, which I think was his goal, and she got up and walked out of this meeting, which didn't go well, because at that point in time, he began to become more vocal and then started to take all of his frustrations out on that particular teacher, and it became a racial thing in his eyes. Because she was white, the entire team was white, because she was white and she did not respect him enough that she could sit there and listen, as he was sitting there listening to what the teachers were telling, all the concerns about his grandson. And it just was a situation that didn't go well, but I felt like because I had a positive relationship with this grandfather, that we kind of deciphered that, and of course in visiting with the teacher on how to better handle that. But it was just a difference, I believe, in sorting all that out, just a difference in how what that teacher felt was important and what that parent did. And in education, we're in the business of customer service. And so we owe parents the right to come in and tell us what their frustrations are, and we have to listen to them, just as when we have parents come in and we're going to say a bunch of negative things about their son or their grandson, we would expect the same thing in return. In that situation, that didn't happen. Our teacher didn't give that, and it just ended up becoming, in his eyes, a racial thing. And so that's an example.
Can I piggyback just off a couple
Please.
of those? I've been writing some things down.
Yeah, and then we're going to, you might be thinking of questions that you have. We're going to kind of take a break in the action and have your questions that maybe have come up of what you've heard so far before we kind of get back to our dialogue. So, yeah, please.
Just while Dave was talking, I was thinking one of the things I've learned in education is to listen. When you meet those parents, when you meet those kids, listen. Really listen to what they're saying. What are they sharing? So, and it could be, like you gave the situation with different races, but you could be the same race, the same gender, and still have that. How are you, what message are you sending? Are you sitting there like this because you just know that kid's not doing well in your language arts class, and you're just waiting for them to get done to give their speech. Think about your body language. You send a message to who, if it's a student or the parent. And that can be an elementary student, that can be a high school student. Kids aren't dumb. They know if you care or not. They will see right through it, and you know what? That teacher doesn't like me. And they're pretty sure that there's nothing you can do about it. They can do about it. They're not going to try in your class. They won't try it for you. So, you're on. When you're a teacher, you're on every minute. You really are. And Mary was talking about the differentiation. Absolutely. Besides, the kids that are in foster care, you're going to have some kids that are going to be homeless, or they just had a divorce, or someone just took off last night, or they kicked their brother or sister out because they were doing drugs. You don't know what just happened that night before. So the fact that they didn't get that assignment done, it may be worth the 30 seconds to just say, hey, what's going on today? You noticed you're a little different.
I just want to piggyback here real quick. Like Vicki said, when you're in front of those kids, everything you say and do, they listen to. Here's just a quick little simple thing a teacher said that landed a parent in my office mad and all get out, because they felt like the teacher was calling their kid a liar and putting them down for their parenting skills. Kid was gone for a few days. For whatever reason, the parents don't always, their lives are busy, things are going on, they don't always call in. So an excused absence for 3 days, then the weekend, kid missed another day, kid comes in on Tuesday, and the teacher says, man, where you been worried about you. Kid said, oh, I wasn't feeling well. Oh, I'm concerned where you're at since everybody said they saw you at Dylan's. Teacher thought nothing about that. Kid went home, told mom, teacher was calling him a liar, that he wasn't sick because he was in Dylan's. So mom's mad that the kid's being called a liar, and then she was upset that he was putting down her parenting skills that she would take you to Dillon's. Well, the deal was, Mom was home with another sick child, Grandma was in town, knew nothing about Junction City, didn't know where Dillon's was, didn't know anything. So Mom sent this son, even though he was sick, she sent him with Grandma to the pharmacy to get the meds. So she felt like he was putting down her parenting skills, that she didn't know how to be a parent. So the littlest things that you say to a kid, they take it and internalize it, and sometimes they feel like, you're calling them liars or putting them down. So you have to be careful of the littlest things and how you say them sometimes.
And don't assume anything.
Yeah. Yeah, just because somebody said they saw my nose doesn't mean they did. But yeah, so anyway.
These are some really great nuggets of advice. I'm so appreciative of your willingness to share examples. Are there any questions that maybe you thought of or would like a little more information about what they've talked about so far, or other questions that have come to mind?
Yeah, I have a question for you. The flipped classroom, like I've read about it, but have you seen positives come from that? Or what have you, in general, what have you seen?
Well, our teachers have just started experimenting with it last May at the end of the year, and they've started it back up again. The thing about when you have a taped lesson, how many times, well, I guess you haven't been in the classroom yet, but a lot of times the teacher will teach a lesson, they'll go through it, they'll say, do you have any questions? Some kids are still trying to process it, and the teacher says, great, no questions, let's go. But when you do the flipped classroom and you have the lesson taped, the student who's struggling can listen to it over and over and over. It gives them more opportunity to hear it and be able to see the example. So the struggling learner gets to have more time to process, because sometimes in the classroom, because we have so much to get through in a 52-minute class, that we don't always take the time to be sure that the kids understand it. Yeah, we say, raise your hand if you don't understand. Well, some kids haven't even got that far to even know if they understand. So the benefit there is that it gives the kid more opportunity to interact, so that they know whether or not they understand, and then when they come in, they know exactly what questions they have, because they've had time to process it. And you have, like Vicki said, you have the homeless and the foster kids and things that may not have technology. Well, what our teachers do is we have advisory time first thing in the morning, so they let them watch the lessons during advisory time if they weren't able to do it at home, or they can come in early if possible. So they're making sure that every student has the opportunity to see that lesson. But it has great impact for the struggling learner.
And for us, we're trying it out too, so I guess as we do more of it, we'll see some more of the benefits. And
it's a real new concept.
And for those of you that are early into your teaching coursework, a flipped classroom is where the kids watch the DVD at home of the lesson and do the homework at school. So instead of just hearing the lesson and then going home and saying, Mom, help me with this, and Mom says, I don't even know what this is all about.
That's been one of the benefits for my parents so far. They said, oh, thank goodness. I wasn't sure how to do this, but at least they're practicing it with you, and it's kind of controlled. So before they practice it wrong several times with me, and they've got it stuck in their head wrong, you're able to correct it. So that's been one of the positives so far.
There are a lot of great videos on YouTube to kind of tutor yourself in what that concept is all about if you want to look.
Khan Academy has some great stuff. It has some not so great stuff, but it has some really great stuff. And some of our teachers have used the Khan Academy lesson because it was what they wanted the concept to say and how it was taught. So they used some of the Khan Academy videos.
I think it's so exciting that our local schools have such cutting-edge practices, and I think you all should get really excited about that. You had a question.
Yes, I wanted to ask about religious pluralism. So, have you had issues with head coverings or anything to do in particular with Muslim students? Because we have more and more Muslim students coming here who have children who are in the public schools.
I have several students who wear head coverings, and I don't know if it's just because of the area that we live in, it hasn't been that much of an issue for the kids or the other parents. Some of the parents that I've had in the past, this is their first experience in the United States with some of the schools, they have a lot more questions, or they may come with biases themselves thinking, okay, are they going to treat my children fairly? When another student makes a comment, do they mean that against my religion? So there's a lot of questions that we have to investigate, quite honestly.
I don't see much issue with religion. We honor like the Jewish holidays where kids are on certain days, they're not allowed to do any kind of schoolwork. I mean, we honor those things. We don't seem to have that as an issue.
Even for our activities, I mean, for some of those, for just, somebody's fasting.
We try to respect, the different religions, and
it's one of the ways we're diverse too, so.
We don't.
Have you had like maybe professional development for teachers around different aspects of religious pluralism? Do you think that's why you're not having problems, or is it?
I can't speak for Manhattan school districts, but we don't do any professional development on religion. It's just a given. If it's part of their religion that they can't do something, then we accept it. We have a young man that carries his Bible around and reads from his Bible all the time, and nobody says anything. He's allowed to pull it out and read it. We've had students who wear the scarves, and it's not an issue for us. In PE, if
females that wear skirts.
Yeah, they're allowed to wear their skirts in PE.
So
we just try to accept everybody's their differences.
And I think probably where we, I guess, would educate our parents in those kinds of things would be on the professional development side of things when we bring in guest speakers, or our topic for professional development is building relationships with our students, because that is very important. You can have all the content knowledge that you want, that you need to be a great teacher, but if you don't know how to deal with kids, if you don't have a positive relationship with your students aren't going to go the extra mile for you. And it doesn't matter how intelligent you are in your content, it's not going to happen. And so in terms of that, just when we talk about getting to know your students, their cultures, where they come from, as our teachers do activities that they get to know one another, they get to know the teacher, as the teachers get to know their students. I think all of those things that you're talking about, any issues or concerns, are brought out during that time, because we encourage our teachers, we celebrate all diversity and all cultures, and we want everyone to be welcomed in our building. So I'm sure.
So like maybe an example would be when students are introducing themselves at the first day of class, and when the teacher's introducing, maybe they would include like the teacher might reveal their religion, or ask the student theirs, if the students wanted to. Would that be one way?
Oh, yeah,
This is my last question.
Yeah, yeah, and we don't force kids to talk about their religion, but when they're introducing, we talk in the whole building relationship with kids. We talk to teachers about sharing about you, so kids know who you are as well. Now, some teachers feel more comfortable sharing lots of things about themselves, and some are very vague about what they want kids to know about themselves, and it's a personal thing. But yeah, we have teachers. If a kid asks me, I tell them I'm Catholic. Sometimes I probably step over the boundary when I'm lecturing kids. I kind of throw the Bible in there once in a while, and but it's just sometimes what I do. But no, we don't have any issues with it. Kids talk about it. Teachers talk about it. They won't.
It's sort of what you're saying is a segue to my question, and I'll give a little background about myself. I'm an assistant professor here in Ed Leadership. I've been a school administrator in Topeka, and you've already sort of answered this, but I thought maybe they would need to hear this in a different way, is when you interview teacher candidates, what do you look for as evidence and characteristics and traits of someone that you believe is culturally proficient?
I ask, you can ask the question, what are your experiences or what diverse experiences, and people can say, oh, I've had a lot. I want to know what they are. I want examples. I want you to tell me if it's been in your student teaching experience, or if it's been while you've been observing or volunteering, or if the school that you were in wasn't maybe as diverse. I listen for what you're telling me, what your opportunities were, and not just thinking one-dimensional too. So I ask for a lot of examples that way, so I can kind of see where you're coming from, to see if it's real. Because people can say, yeah, I've had lots of opportunities, or I grew up in this area. Okay, well, you grew up in this area. But what are some things that you bring to the table? I want to know that.
I agree, Vicki. We look for those examples because Judge City Middle School has every diverse population group. When it comes to AYP, the only group that we don't have a subgroup for is American Indian. So I want to know that you've had experiences with different cultures. Like Vicki, I want to know if you worked summer camp with special needs students. I want to know if you've worked, after school programs for Boys and Girls Club. I want to know the things that you've done that would show me that you've had those experiences with many different
You
cultures.
babysat kids with a disability. I mean, whatever it is, no matter your experiences through your life, if it happened when you were 13 or 17,
That's why it's important to have those experiences when you have that opportunity, whether you initiate that opportunity or someone else because of a requirement or a class, that you go in there with the attitude of, I'm going to get the most that I can out of this experience, and I want everything to come my way that could possibly happen, because those experiences are going to make you a better teacher, a better leader, whatever it might be, because if you stay in this community, you are going to be faced with those things every day. And one thing we really haven't even talked about is the military. I mean, we are so impacted by the military in our district. We are such a transient. Our enrollment fluctuates so much, as I'm sure Vicky's is the same way. But, we have kids being raised by brothers, as Mary said, because both parents are deployed, or we have parents that are students that are here and now there's a deployment, so mom takes the children back to wherever the case might be, so they're here, and then when dad comes back, now they're back with us. There's just so many things that happen there that really impact us, and I'm very fortunate that I work in a district that we have a superintendent that is 100% supportive of diversity, of meeting the needs of our students and our teachers. And there's not too many districts that have that with the technology and those kinds of things, because we've seen teachers come and go, and some people are right around the corner and others go long distances away, and when we reconnect with those people, they say, I didn't realize how well I had it in Junction City or in Manhattan, whatever the case might be. And at the time, they may think, gosh, this is too much diversity for me, or this is too, and they're second guessing what their professional choices were at that point in time.
in the same vein, as you're interviewing, you need to look for that in your schools too, in the school districts. You need to be thinking about the questions and how is that going to help shape you as a teacher yourself too. Think about yourself in all your different experiences. You've wanted a teacher that could make a connection with you, that would understand you and one of your classes, and probably sometime in your school life you have had someone that did not. So you don't want to be that kind of a teacher for your students that you're going to impact. So what can you bring to the table? What experiences can you put yourself in?
Other questions?
I have one. I grew up in a town that's probably like 99–98% Caucasian. So I think I, went to school with one other ethnic group my whole K through 12. And so, how would you approach that aspect? Because I did my observations in a diverse school, so I got to see it, but not experience it.
Well, is it okay if I go? Just jump in there. Obviously, what we've talked about is having those experiences is very important because of the dynamics of the school and the students that we work in, and we want to meet the needs, and by having those experiences, the chances are greater that that's going to happen. But that doesn't, I guess to answer your question, kind of reading through there, would you ever be considered for maybe something in our district, maybe?
Yeah.
If that's where you're going, I would say there's other things that we base that on too, because we do have teachers in our building that came from situations just as yourself that don't, but they're real good about making those relationships with kids. And either, we're all administrators, and where you do your student teaching, we know somebody that knows you, or the kind of person that you are. And depending on who that individual is that's giving us that information on whether that's merit to to be legit, I guess. But there's some other things too. I don't want you to think that if you don't have those experiences, you're not. But you know, there's building relationships. You know, are you flexible? Are you, you know, can you think on your feet? Because so many times there's so many different things that happen. You know, you could have a student that just all of a sudden blurts out in class and just starts crying, and you're unsure, and then come to find out she or he has told their neighbor that SRS was at their house yesterday or something like that. And then how quick can you think on your feet to handle that situation, regardless of the race, the color,
Which I actually saw that.
you know, those kinds of things. So there's some other things to answer that.
And those would be good ones to bring up, like that example in your interview, honestly, to share your different experiences, to give that well-roundedness to you.
Other questions? These are great questions you guys are coming up with, and they're very important. Dr. Rankin, did you have a question?
Just an observation. Thank you for sharing. The thing that's important for you to remember as potential teachers is that probably 90% of the clientele you're going to be working with, you exemplify something they're not. See, and what I mean by that is you're college graduates. Probably they're not college graduates. So there's a certain intimidation that they'll feel from you because you've done things they haven't been able to do for whatever the reason. The most important thing of being a successful teacher in a diverse setting is knowing yourself. Really know who you are. Like the young lady shared that she grew up in an environment that 90% of the people were Caucasian. You know, well, I grew up in an environment where 90% of the people were Caucasian, but I wasn't one of them. So that's obvious, I guess. But I had to learn the dynamics of that culture, that world. The same thing applies to when children are in your classroom. You have expectations of them that they don't know because they never lived it. And the only experience they get is when they come into your classroom setting and you start providing them with the educational experience. So when you look at your students, don't look at them as, well, this is the type of student I was when I was in that grade. And, you know, my parents did this when I was coming up as a child. Because they don't have those same experiences. And the thing that's most important to remember is that I call it the Cadillac of teaching. Because you get the opportunity to work with young people who have no notion of what this world offers. And you can make them or break them. And don't ever underestimate the power as a teacher standing before that classroom that you have over those children. You can make them or completely destroy them. I've said for years that you give me any child, middle class, Romney's kids, Obama's kids, any child, and in 180 days I can completely destroy that individual so they'll never be able to function in this society. That's the power you have. So as you embark on your career, getting ready to do this, you know, and you stand before these young people, whatever grade level you're working with, you know, it's a wonderful, wonderful job. It's a wonderful job. It's a wonderful opportunity. But there's a lot of responsibility that goes along with that. Because the research says, when you go through the K-12 experience, if you have 3 good teachers, you're very fortunate. Just 3. And you'll have a whole bunch more than 3. So don't underestimate the power and influence that you have. It's a wonderful job. But
Thank you, Dr.
opportunities.
Rankin. Thank you.
Ditto, and you may be thinking, okay, how do I know about some of these things myself? A couple years ago in our district, we did, as administrators, a book study on several different books, but one was Cultural Proficiency. I actually brought it with me. But some of the scenarios that were in there, when we were working through them, it was just like, oh gosh, you know, we had discussions, and there were things we learned about ourselves, different biases that we had that we didn't even realize we were carrying around with us. So it might be something you might want to check into yourself, just to say, oh, you know, I never thought about that from this perspective. The powerful part was we were doing it in a group, and having the diverse group really made it a valuable conversation too.
There are lots of books out there, there's workshops, but you know, you have to take that opportunity, you really do.
Like, what kind of resources do the districts have for new teachers in dealing with diverse students that, like, maybe I have no clue how to even pronounce where you were from, honestly.
Because of, I don't know, I'm thinking of all the diverse things that you may be facing. It could be a student with autism, it could be a student with anxiety, it could be a divorced family. So we have resources in our schools besides social worker and special education and professional development that each of our districts offer. One of the things that we do in our teams, at least at middle schools, as we have concerns, there's just something not quite right. We're working together as a team, and so we're able to pull resources among ourselves and pull in resources from our community. Sometimes it's K-State, sometimes it's a community support. Maybe it's some of our other social work or Pawnee mental health. So it depends kind of what scenario you're in. Is what I was thinking.
And I can't speak for Manhattan, but like at Junction City, they offer a lot of professional development that you can take advantage of that's after school hours. One class that you're required to take in your first 2 years of teaching, you have to go to this, is TESA, which is student expectations, or teacher expectation on student achievement. And then you have to take GESA, which is gender expectations on student achievement. You're required to take both of those in your first 2 years. And both, like the TESA, you go in, you learn about who you call on and who you don't. You'll go in and observe. Do you always call on the girls? Do you never call on the boys? Do you call on only the kids sitting in front? Do you call on the kids in the back? Do you call the kids who have their hands up? So you learn a lot about your expectations and how you interact with students. And then you also, when you take the gender one, you learn about the different genders. So our district provides lots of staff development opportunities. We bring in presenters. We brought in one at the beginning of the year from AML. She's a national presenter. She talked about relationships. She talked about adolescent learners. She talked about how boys learn different than girls. She talked about how to get your students engaged, how to build relationships. So we try to bring in different presenters. Some of them are national, some are from K-State, some are from other schools. So the district offers a lot of resources that you can take advantage of yourself.
And a lot of those are in our our mentoring programs. We have mentoring programs at a lot of the districts like ours and others around it. So that's definitely a question I'd ask too if you're going out for an interview. What kind of support do you have for them?
Yep, and ask if they have a mentoring program for you.
Same kind of things in our districts. So.
Please, go ahead.
We talked about teachers having biases and you dealing with biases with the adults in your building. Do you see biases and bullying between the kids with the different diversity groups, and how do you handle that?
Well, middle school, you're always going to have those kind of issues because that's the nature of a middle school kid. The hormones are kicking in. They're trying to figure out where they fit in. They want to be in this group. Maybe this group doesn't want that. So that's the nature. But that's part of that relationship building with kids. You just don't build a relationship with kids. You have to teach kids how to build relationships. In our school district, we have adopted the Olveus anti-bullying program, which talks a lot about how to prevent bullying, what's bullying look like, what do you do when it happens. It talks about ways to prevent it and how to get help. So that's the anti-bullying program they have. But we also have our advisory time where teachers are to do activities where they interact, where kids have to interact and build relationships and learn how to get along with each other. We do class meetings every Friday in our advisor program. They can talk about a current topic in society, like whether they think about Facebook issues or texting and driving. Those kind of things get kids to interact, and in that interaction, then you teach them how to accept other people's opinions. So it's something that teachers have to do. They have to teach that at middle school and probably elementary, and I'm sure some high schools.
We have the same things. The Olveus class meeting is one of the most important components, and it's not just bringing bullying issues up, but it's also about that character and helping them have a different scope and perspective and that respect for one another. And we keep talking about the kids that don't know because of maybe where they come from or their background. We kind of let them know the rules of the game, so it's not a foreign idea. So here's how things are managed when you're in school. So if they know, when I'm talking to kids, I talk all the time and make the analogy between basketball and football. Okay, so if you're running down if you got a ball in your hand and you're running down the basketball court, is that a penalty? Yes, it is. It's traveling. Is it in football? No, it's not. So we talk about the different rules of the game, and for some kids, we just have to flat out lay out the rules of the game. Okay, here's things that are acceptable when you're conversing with someone. Here's something that's acceptable and acceptable as far as we even talk about, the body language, what message you send in those class meetings. And those are smaller groups, so it's 15 kids, for example, working with that teacher. The hard part I have found as an administrator is sometimes you don't have a teacher that's comfortable leading that with kids. So there's a lot of development with the staff members on that too. It has to happen.
And to go along with what Vicki said, you set the expectations, you set the foundation, the guidelines, the rules. But most importantly is that you carry through with that expectation, that you don't tolerate. If you have a no bullying policy in your classroom, then when it happens, you have to deal with it. You have to make sure that whatever you say, you carry through with, because the person, maybe I'm interacting with her, but everybody else in the class is waiting to see if I say anything about her because she called him gay. If I let that go and I don't address it, then everybody else is watching to say, oh, well, their rules or expectations don't mean anything because they're not doing anything about it. So once you set that foundation, you have to make sure that you carry through with it. We don't tolerate name calling, we don't tolerate bullying, we don't tolerate teasing. When it happens, you address it and take care of the issue. Because everybody else is watching what you do all the time and how you interact.
And with that program, we try to empower the kids too themselves, so it's not just the adult intervening, giving them some of the solutions. What's something you could try in this scenario? What's something you could try without being violent or volatile too?
Great questions. I also feel like I need to say that we did invite high school and elementary, and I'm not sure why Mrs. Devon couldn't come today, but I'm hoping that I feel very comfortable that a lot of these topics are going to be your topics, whether you're K to 12 or pre-K or even the early childhood. We talked a little bit about accommodations. And I know one accommodation for the military is you may do a parent conference through Skype. And the soldier may be in Afghanistan, but you're having your teacher do their parent conference that way. What are some other specific accommodations that you ask teachers to make with a student that they may not have thought of, or that your teachers are in the midst of that they might need to familiarize themselves with?
Do you mean with military or any?
Or any.
One that I've seen come up recently in the last couple of years that I guess I just didn't have on my radar is I have more kids that have anxiety issues. And you may think, anxiety, that's not that big of a deal. Well, if you've never faced that, it is. Recently I have a student who can't make it down the hallway to 3 of her classes. And she's responsible for that language arts or social studies or that science content. So we're having to make some accommodations for her. Do we still want her to be down there in that classroom so she has that rich environment of interaction with her peers? Absolutely, but we're working with her and her parents on that, and also kind of a wraparound meeting with her doctor too. We need to continue to push her, but not so far we push her over the edge that she stops too. So that's one that was kind of on my radar the last couple of years. I just thought, wow, I probably need to get my teachers a little more support of that so they have a better understanding. If you just think, oh, anxiety is no big deal, somebody's afraid of that. No, it's more than that. It really is. So for a couple of my students, it's been paralyzing. They do not move. So that was one that was different for me.